Great.
Well, welcome everybody to our wellness webinar this is October 19th, 2015, and it's my wonderful pleasure to be able to introduce Bob Ferguson. Bob is a dear friend who has varied background as an entrepreneur and community leader and organizer. And he joined his family's Shaklee business in 1977. He has studied and spoken about health and nutrition around the United States and Canada for many years. In fact, when we were fledglings in the business, we asked him to come in and speak. He was willing to do so, even though he really had no idea who we were. But he did a great job for us, so we continue to thank him for that. He's deeply involved in sustainability, local economic development, and regional food systems in his hometown, Fairfield, Iowa. And he has served as co-chairman of the Go Green Commission and is on the board as well, board secretary for Southeast Iowa Food Hub and Sustainable Living Coalition. It's a mouthful. He is passionate about Shaklee's mission to offer better health to everyone and a better life to anyone. And he does this in his personal life. That's his personal philosophy that he likes to pursue. So, again, it's our great pleasure, and thank you so much for doing this for us tonight. I'm going to turn it over to you and get ready to take lots of notes.
Well,
so thank you, Bob.
Yeah, and Joe, it's really, really a pleasure to be here tonight with everyone. And we're going to discuss a better approach to healthcare with Shaklee. Now, this is not going to be a completely comprehensive presentation. That would take much more than the 20 minutes or so we're going to provide for you. But I would, first of all, like everyone to know that these slides are really Dr. Bruce Daggie's slides that I've added a few to. And so it's in deep appreciation that I'm going to do my very best to channel Dr. Bruce Daggie tonight. Mm-hmm. Let's get going. Let's talk about health. Isn't it true, as it's been said, that many people spend the first half of their life working to gain wealth and then end up spending the last half of their life spending that wealth, trying to regain the health that they lost in the process of gaining the wealth? So there's got to be a better way to do it. And Hippocrates actually has something pretty profound to say. Now, it's commonly known that Hippocrates was supposed to have said, "Let food be thy medicine." But I think this quote actually is a little bit more deep and actually quite a bit more profound in terms of what it says to us about our responsibility for maintaining our health. Now, this does not mean when you get sick you shouldn't go to the doctor. It does mean that it's really our responsibility to understand that our health is really our most valuable possession, and then to learn how to treat our health by our own judgment. So I would just say, rather treat as illnesses, treat our health by our own judgment. So it's really up to us to make the lifestyle choices and the allocations of money and resources in order to maintain our health. So what is the definition of health? And I really love the definition, this definition that Bruce came up with. Health is all-day energy. Health is vigor and vitality. Health is mental clarity and alertness. Health is also strength to be able to lift appropriate weight for your age. Health is ability to move easily and participate in activities. Health is freedom from chronic conditions. And health is zest for life. And parenthetically down at the bottom, health is also laughing often. So when I make this presentation, and I've made it quite a few times, I ask people, which of these elements of health would you voluntarily give up? And of course, most people say, well, I wouldn't give any of them up. They're all essential. They all create the structure of what we call health and vitality in our life. And this is exactly what Dr. Shaklee talked about. Now, what he pointed out is that health is not the absence of disease, as is commonly understood. If I'm not sick, I'm therefore healthy. Health is actually the opposite of disease. Because if you parse disease, it's dis-ease. Health is the far end of being diseased. And Dr. Shaklee asked a question, why not do everything within our power to build health? And in fact, why indeed not? So here's the problem, folks. Around 1990, 95, right under the year 2000, the health span of people in the United States started to flatten out. In other words, as we were living longer, our lifespan up there, in fact, from 1950, in fact, throughout this century, we have approximately doubled the amount of time we're living. But we have not, however, doubled the amount of time we've been living in a healthy fashion. And in fact, if you look at this projection between lifespan and health span, we've got a real problem. I don't know about anyone on the call, but I have a real problem with spending the last 25 years of my life in ill health, which is what this difference between the lifespan and the health span graph actually represent. You're going to live quite a while, but your health is going to start tailing off, and if this projection is true, on the average, people in the United States are going to spend 25 years in a state of ill health. Now, folks, that is no fun. It's no way I would want to live. And frankly, as a society, we can't even afford that. So we really need to look at strategies for what are we going to do to bring our health span up closer to our lifespan. So here's some suggestions. Again, not totally comprehensive, but really good places to start. So if you look at core nutrition, healthy weight, healthy pregnancy in kids, targeted solutions for specific health challenges or particular needs that a particular individual would have, and healthy home, these are all things that are solidly in the purview of Shaklee. This is what we deal with. We deal with all those issues. Now, I suggest to people that if you're taking care of the bottom 5 issues, you're probably much more likely to feel good and you're much more likely to exercise. If you're feeling good and you're exercising, I'm guessing that you probably will have less of a tendency to need to self-medicate yourself with nicotine and other things, and it may even influence your thinking and make your thinking clearer so that if you do have something going on that you know you should be going to the physician, and guys particularly are not very good at that, you're probably going to make better decisions. So these are some strategies that we can use to move our health span up closer to our lifespan. And there is, in fact, a growing recognition on the limitations of a healthcare system based almost exclusively on medical intervention. And this is one of my favorite slides that I've seen ever from Dr. Daggy. This molecule on the top is the most profitable drug ever produced by any drug company. And that molecule on the bottom is a nutrient. So let's look at drugs and nutrients and probably come to some conclusions as to why looking to pharmaceuticals, looking to big pharma particularly to stay healthy is probably not a great idea. Now, I am very, very glad modern medicine has developed the kind of drugs that can and procedures that are near miraculous. But because of the financial structure of drug companies, if you look at the bottom in terms of key considerations for drugs, the key consideration is not maintenance of health or anything else like that. It is market size. Because if you're going to spend billions of dollars and get a category killer drug, if you will, you want to sell a lot of it. So if you look at an ideal drug, for instance, is it patented? Yes. No one else can have it. Is it cheap to make? Yes. Is it stable in the bottle? Yes. Does it do one thing, ideally, so that you can make money with this particular drug doing a particular thing? Nutrient interactions, undesirable. It's not desirable that this drug would interact with nutrients. And is it needed by all forever? Well, yes, that would be great, but highly unlikely. And the years taken to perfect, generally less than 10. So this is the financial incentive of the drug companies. This is their business model. The business model is not to maintain health. The business model is to make a drug that is patentable, inexpensive to make, stable, does one thing, and is used by a whole bunch of people. If you look at essential nutrients, you see something very different. Is it patented? Well, no, because it's an essential nutrient made by nature. Cheap to make, stable in the bottle, not applicable in nature. Does one thing? No. An essential nutrient doesn't do one thing. Essential nutrients interact with all other nutrients in an unimaginably complex system called our body. And Are there nutrient interactions? Absolutely. Is it needed by all forever? Yes. That's why it's called an essential nutrient. Years taken to perfect, millennia, and the key consideration is fit for purpose. So again, this is another way of saying that if we want to maintain our health, we don't look outside for a silver bullet to fix us up when we get sick. What we look at are essential nutrients, our ability to take in essential nutrients, and sleep, and water, and social interaction, and all those things that the Blue Zones folks say are common in all of the areas where people live to 100 in a very healthy way. So there is a greater interest in prevention. I've certainly seen it in my conversations with people, and an effective incorporation of nutrition and lifestyle into healthcare. That the conversation is beginning to happen, and it's making the front cover of Time, and it really needs to. Because if 1/3 of our healthcare costs are due to just 4 diseases, and while no one can completely statistically prevent the possibility of heart disease, stroke, cancer, or diabetes, we all know who have been in Shaklee for quite a while, and people who read the literature, those diseases are largely preventable. In other words, you can do things with your core nutrition, with the food you eat, with the supplements you take, with other strategies that dramatically reduce the amount of heart disease, stroke, and cancer and diabetes that may afflict you. And boy, oh boy, do we have a long way to go. There is a fried Twinkies.
Ooh, yum.
Yeah.
It's
Just what I always wanted.
yeah, just what I always wanted. So it is. We have a long ways to go because our society is not built on an Aboriginal diet. Traditional societies figured out over millennia what to eat. And it didn't matter whether they were in the mountains in Switzerland or in the South Sea Islands or in native First Nations in Canada. Aboriginal communities figured out what to eat based on what was available to them. And they understood that. We have no such, we don't even have the cultural knowledge that European countries have. So we end up with fried Twinkies. So let's look at what was going on in the U.S. 100 years ago. We might even have to go 115 years as our time is advancing. But in 1915, by and large, our surface water was not nearly as polluted as it is now. The only kind of chickens we had were free range. CAFOs, confined animal feeding operations, had not been invented. Antibiotics, God bless them. It's a very good thing we have them. It's not such a great thing that we feed them in low doses, which many people who live in the city don't really know, that low doses of antibiotics are fed to animals because it fattens them up. And it also allows them to sit in places where the average laying hen, the chicken being raised, spends her entire life in a space less than 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
I don't want to hear this.
We have rich soil because we hadn't destroyed our soil quite as much. Nutrient dense and home cooked meals, well, that was the only kind you had because McDonald's had not been invented and we didn't have hormones that we were feeding our cattle. So now we have, there's a lot of really positive things, but these are some of the things that are tending to degrade our environment, degrade the quality of our food. And let's look at just exactly how degraded that quality of food actually has become. This is from the Nutrition Security Institute. And, many of us who have been in Shaklee for a long time have heard the idea that there's soil depletion and all that kind of stuff. Well, what actually depletes the actual amount of nutrient in foods? Well, it's this. It's soil depletion. It's plant breeding. It's breeding plants for profit. Same kind of issue and problem we have with big pharma. Tomatoes are bred to withstand bruising and to turn red even if they're picked completely green. Then, of course, food processing and even animal breeding and husbandry, and then storage, transportation, and processing. So let's dig into this a little bit and look at what's happened, let's say, to an apple. This is the decline in the mineral content of a medium apple, raw with skin, from 1914 to 1992. And folks, it hasn't gotten any better since 1992. So when you think about it, if an apple is something that we have cultivated over millennia, probably certainly from a wild plant, and come up in the year 1900, we had 80 varieties of apples grown in Iowa, and Iowa is the largest producer of apples in the country. Well, look at the percent change in calcium. Minus 48%, minus 84% for phosphorus, minus 82% for magnesium, minus 96% for iron. So when you say an apple a day, well, what kind of apple are we talking about? This next chart is also really interesting. This is the average mineral content in selected vegetables from 1914 to 1997. So you can see most of the damage was done by 1993. This has particular significance to me because my Uncle Carl was William Albrecht's grad student at University of Missouri in late 1930s, 1938, I believe. And he and Professor Albrecht were already documenting in 1938 a 50% reduction in calcium in Missouri soils, which led to a commensurate reduction in the protein content of grains. So this has been going on for a while, this depletion of our soils. So these are all issues that we need to think about when we look at optimal nutrition. Now, as it says, optimal nutrition supports optimal health. Well, most people would agree with that. Common sense would, no one with common sense would deny it. However, what qualifies as optimal nutrition is not necessarily easy. And this is where Shaklee comes in. Dr. Shaklee in 1915 made the first multi-mineral, multivitamin vitalized minerals. And for over 40 years, he studied. He had large herb farms in Florida and in Oakland, and he studied the capacity we might have to take nutrients from plants, concentrate them in a way that the nutrient values stay where they're supposed to be, and get them into the city and other places where people didn't have farm fresh vegetables and fruits and that kind of thing. And we know now that even if you have farm fresh fruits and vegetables, depending on how those things are grown, you may get high nutrient levels or low nutrient levels. So Shaklee, the basic design criteria of Shaklee products are three: always safe, always green, and always works. And we put millions of dollars into R&D, 100,000 quality tests per year. The statistic I like the most that came out of the Global Conference in Cleveland was that the specifications for Life Plan, our new flagship product, run to 76,000 pages. Now, I don't know what the heck they're putting on 76,000 pages, but that's actually pretty impressive. So we have marvelous research that validates, both analyzes what public health needs are, and then comes up with formulas and then validates the safety and efficacy of those formulas. And of course, to do that, you've got to actually have a real lab. So this is our real lab. This is the Forrest C. Shaklee Innovation Center in Pleasanton, California. That's Roger Barnett, and to his left is Dr. Daggy in the front, and Dr. Jamie McManus, and many, many other staff at the lab. There are, I think, 70 or 80 staff members there, many of them with advanced degrees. And in that lab, they have all kinds of really, really, really cool equipment. I was there a couple months ago, and Dr. Daggy brought Maggie, my partner, and I through, and it was just really thrilling. This is absolutely state-of-the-art analytical capability, state-of-the-art formulation capability, really pretty cool stuff. And Shaklee's prowess, scientific prowess, and scientific contributions are recognized in the literature. 125 scientific publications and presentations, whether they are in journals or they're presented at conferences. It's all juried, refereed, peer-reviewed. And this is one of the studies that I'd like to tarry on a little bit. This is what is now known as the landmark study. It's one of the most searched nutrition studies on PubMed. And basically, what Roger Barnett did when he bought Shaklee in 2004, he decided that we would take the chance that maybe the study doesn't come out like we hope, but he said he was pretty sure it would. He decided that he would commission a study from an unimpeachable source, Dr. Gladys Block, one of the top nutritional epidemiologists in the world at UC Berkeley School of Public Health, and do a retrospective study looking at long-term Shaklee users versus people who use no supplements versus a group that used a multimineral multivitamin. The control groups were the experimental group with Shaklee was made up of 1,000 people who had actually, had their blood drawn in 2005. About 280 finished all of the testing. So the Shaklee group was 280 people, which is a very large cohort. And then Dr. Block found control groups, matched control groups within the NHANES database. That is a database of a government study done every 10 years assessing nutritional status in the United States. Dr. Block knows a lot about that because she's the one who sets that database up. So she actually found two control groups. Now it's interesting that the Shaklee group was so unique that they couldn't find a non-supplemented control group that was the same age. So the control group that did not use supplements was actually average age 53. The Shaklee group was average age 63. So in this study, the Shaklee group gave a 10-year running head start on the control group. And then the control group that used a multimineral multivitamin, I think it was about 57, 58. And basically what they did is they looked at 3 issues. First of all, optimal nutrient level, because these are all people who have used a lot of Shaklee products, an average of 17 Shaklee nutrients for a minimum of 20 up to 42 years. So the first question is, what about nutrient levels in the blood? Well, it turns out that the Shaklee group had optimal nutrient levels in their blood. And the second question is, what about biomarkers of disease? It turns out that the Shaklee group had optimal biomarkers, more optimized biomarkers. One interesting fact was that C-reactive protein is a marker for cancer. And of the 280 people in the Shaklee group, average age 63, not one single person had elevated C-reactive protein. Dr. Daggy said that is virtually a statistical impossibility. So that was pretty impressive. And perhaps most impressive of all was that there was actually a lower incidence of disease. The control group had 8.9% diabetes. The control group that had a supplement had 11.1. The Shaklee group had 2.9. If you simply extended that, that value and generalized it to the whole population, you'd be talking about billions and billions of dollars saved. So this is a pretty interesting study. And of course, the idea that Shaklee, these may not be the 25 greatest adventures, but they are according to Time Life, and 7 of those were powered by Shaklee. And Shaklee has gone to space. There is a strip of Vitalizer floating in space with Commander Mark Kelly, who first started bringing Shaklee supplements into space in 2001. And if I can go back here, that liftoff there, Shaklee actually has a product that they made for NASA many, many years ago, right at the beginning of the program, that was a specialized version of our performance, our hydration drink, that was used to fuel the Daedalus project, the one in the middle. And Shaklee never sold that product because it was called AstroAid. It has a limited market share. In fact, it's only one customer, and that was NASA, and they gave it to NASA. It was a very specialized version of performance that helped the astronauts with their re-entry, which can be a real physiological problem. So all those things are pretty cool. So the other thing is that Shaklee is always green, and this is a quote from the California Public Utilities Commission. Shaklee leadership is great and could be quite meaningful. So there's a general recognition of always works, always green, always safe, really is something that people recognize and appreciate. Now let's spend a moment on what's happening in our homes. As it says here, chemicals in and around our home can poison people or pets and can cause long-term health effects. Every 13 seconds, a poison control center in the United States answers a call about a possible poisoning. Now, more than 90% of these exposures occur in the home. Let's look at a particularly egregious example of this. Now, before we get to the example, let's look at cleaning product development, which is actually the same even for any of our products, nutritional products, the skincare products. If you look at the philosophical construct of Martin Buber, there's one. It's called I-it. Most other cleaning companies use an I-it mental construct. I-it means that it's me, the company, and it, the market. It's not people, it's a market. And so in that particular philosophical construct, you get the hard surface clean, you do whatever is legal to do it, you downplay safety concerns, you create lots of meaningless line extensions, and you put a tiny fraction of a cent of chemicals in a bottle and ship plastic and water in the millions and millions of tons around the country and around the world. Now, Shaklee has a different philosophy. It has an I-thou philosophy. So our question is, let's help the person needing to clean. Now, obviously, if the hard surface doesn't get clean, you're not helping the person. So the hard surface is going to get clean. And anyone who's used Shaklee cleaners certainly knows that they work extremely well. On the other hand, if you're going to help the person, you cannot use ingredients with a poor margin of safety. You can't use ingredients that only work on a high or low pH. You're not going to use fragrances and dyes. And your ingredients are, and you're not going to use ingredients that are not readily biodegradable, because using non-biodegradable surfactants doesn't help people. And you're going to radically minimize packaging waste, because it doesn't help people shipping huge amounts of plastic and water around the country. So let's look at one thing. A couple of years ago, some of the companies thought it would be really good to make a very convenient form of laundry called a laundry pod, like a little wafer, like a little laundry soap candy bar. Well, unfortunately, that's exactly what kids did with it. So this is the curve of the poisonings, the calls to the poison control center of children who are eating the laundry pods. Now, remember that those companies have an I-it philosophy. Well, their response was this really effective label here. See that thing? They have this little, don't eat this thing. Now, that is supposed to stop a 2-year-old from eating it. You can only do that, and you can only, tolerate pod poisonings increasing even after changing to packaging if you really don't care that much about people. So that's a real big Shaklee difference. So we believe something different. We believe home should be the safest place in the whole world, and our products express that. So we're going to do a little bit more, and then we'll finish up. We're going to look at a couple of studies that are emblematic of how powerful Shaklee science is. And since this is a talk on maintaining, health and health strategies, Vivix is a central one. Vivix is our anti-aging product. It is a combination of resveratrol and polyphenols from muscadine grapes. And I realize I'm going to have to change this slide because it's now 13 times more powerful than resveratrol alone. So let's look at one study. The other thing that's very interesting about Shaklee does lots of scientific research with their own lab, but they also team up with universities, people who are digging deep into areas that we are interested in. And in many cases, key ingredients of our products are co-developed with university help. So this is a study that was presented at Experimental Biology in Boston this spring. The setup was this. Basically, you take 3 petri dishes, you put human pancreatic cells in each one. In one, you don't do anything with it. The second one, you bathe it with resveratrol. And the third one, you bathe it with resveratrol and polyphenol blend, Vivix, the Vivix active ingredients. Then after you bathed it for a while, you wash the treatment away, and then you stress the cells with acid for 5 minutes. Then you use a Comet assay to look at how much DNA was destroyed. What was the DNA damage look like? Well, here's what happened. In the unprotected cell, dish where there was nothing, almost all the DNA was destroyed by the acid. You got that little tiny bit of DNA left and a big debris field. With resveratrol, which gets a lot of press as something that's an anti-aging compound, and indeed it is, because you'll see that the DNA is much more intact with that, but there's still quite a debris field. Here is the comet assay of Vivix. Now, I think if everyone was live or you'd hear all the oohs and ahs, this is an astounding graph. That is how much DNA was left. In fact, most of it remained intact. So I don't know if you, but I prefer my DNA non-blown up. So there you have it. So that's a pretty amazing study. The second study, which is, again, there's hundreds of them, but these are emblematic and I think demonstrate the practical value. I mean, the practical value of this last slide is that you want your DNA intact. And in reality, when you eat food, your DNA is attacked by cascades of oxidative particles. That's just produced by your body. And the ability to continue living is entirely dependent on our ability to kind of fix up DNA that's hit by these oxidative species. And so the fact that Vivix is so incredibly protective of DNA material when stressed in the way that it was is a very, very significant finding. So the other significant finding dealt with telomeres. Now this is Elizabeth Blackburn. She was the 2009 Nobel Prize winner in medicine. And she's also on the Shaklee Scientific Advisory Board. Well, if you don't do real science, you're not going to get Nobel Prize winners actually joining your scientific advisory board. So Elizabeth got her Nobel Prize for studying telomeres. Now telomeres, if you look at the left there, are little end caps on your chromosomes. They're approximately equivalent to the ends on your shoelace, the little plastic caps on your shoelace. When those fray or break, well, you can't use your shoelace. And it's the same thing with a telomere. When those little end caps go, the genetic material unwinds and it no longer functions. So Elizabeth got her, Dr. Blackburn got her Nobel for determining that there was a direct relationship between mortality and length of telomeres. In other words, if your telomeres were shorter, you were more likely to die. For instance, a 3.2-fold higher mortality rate from heart disease, 8.5 higher mortality rate from infectious disease. Now, she studied telomerase, which helps reestablish, the length of telomeres, but that's probably more detail than what we need. We just need to know that short telomeres equals higher mortality. So this is the Shaklee telomere study. The landmark study involved people who had used Shaklee 20 to 42 years. This involved people who had used Shaklee at least 5 years, most of them using Vivix, but some not. And it was a very simple premise. They just simply studied the length of Shaklee telomeres, Shaklee folks' telomeres. And then they got a control group of healthy adults, same age, 33 to 80 years old, non-smoking healthy people in the Bay Area, and they measured their telomeres. Now, parenthetically, I don't have a slide in here, but Dr. Eppel, one of Dr. Blackburn's team member, is quoted in saying that she has never in her research career ever seen a healthier adult sample than the folks who participated in this study. And these were 5-year Shaklee users. So here's the fascinating results. It is interesting that the Shaklee 33-year-olds' telomeres are longer than the control telomeres. What is shocking, astounding, and really has huge implications for why you really might want to get on Shaklee and use it, is that the Shaklee 80-year-olds had telomeres that were about the same length as the control 40-year-olds. Now that is simply an astounding finding. If there is in fact a direct correlation between the length of telomeres and mortality, hey, when I'm 80, I'd rather have 40-year-old telomeres, not 80-year-old telomeres like the control group. That's pretty good. And so a little bit more on the so we say that Shaklee products are proven by science, but they're also proven by people. And I'm going to close by introducing you to some people who are near and dear to me. First one, actually, that's Bob Ferguson. That's me and my partner Maggie and my mom, Kay. Now, that was taken just a few months ago when Kay was 94. Now, when I make this presentation and people look at that and I say, you know what? If you want a skin that looks like my mom's at age 94, you pretty much have to use our stuff. So, I've also pointed out they simply do not make grandmothers like they used to. That's Maggie and her grandson.
Oh, wow.
So, there is real implication for this. Now, folks, this is not scientific, but I just had to put this in because it's too cool. You know, Charles Wood, the little boy, is about to push his 50-pound sister on the little car. At the time of this video, was 11 and a half months old, wasn't even a year old. And Chelsea, his mom, had been marinated in Shaklee products in Maggie's womb, and Charles was marinated in Shaklee products in Chelsea's womb. And both of them had, continued, using the products for many, many years. And so this is, I pose, what happens when you have two generations of very serious Shaklee supplementation. Here we go.
Go. Have a pushy.
Wow.
I love it.
Goodness, my goodness.
Oh, great. Oh, that's a long way to go.
Oh, impressive.
Folks,
Yes.
not only does that show potentially, the physical implications of really, really good nutrition, I think those children's interaction with each other also shows the influence of good nutrition. I mean, just love and appreciation, everything, probably good genes and very good parenting skills. So that's interesting. So it works on the back end of life, it works on the front end of life, and so here's a couple of friends of mine. This is Champ and Barbara Champion, Roscoe and Barbara Champion. I took these picture quite a few years ago. They were in their 70s, well into their 70s at that point. Champ was a competitive swimmer in college, worked at Sandia Lab, decided that at 55 he had had enough of that, retired, and started to swim again. Well, Champ has entered 59 regional, state, and national competitions.
Wow.
He's won 59 times. Well, that's pretty impressive. But what's really interesting is this one. This is Champ and his brother. Champ's brother is only 2 years older than him. And he decided that he could do without Shaklee supplements. It's, I think, pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So, last slide isn't 65. But that's actually me doing asanas in my office in Hawaii, looking out over the ocean and up in Haleakala. I'll tell you, folks, this is personal for me. There's tremendous science behind Shaklee, and there's tremendous, just the landmark study alone is plenty of evidence that people who use a lot of Shaklee products end up in much, much better health. But it's also really enjoyable to be 65 and be able to do stunts like that and to actually feel just as good as I did. In fact, I actually feel better than I did when I was 19. And I'm actually physically more flexible than I was when I was 19. So anyway, as I say, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow.
Wow, that was terrific. And I know how difficult that position is that you're taking there. I know very well. Tough. But you are strong. You are bright. You share beautifully with us. Joe, do we have questions from anybody?
Oh, look, but Bob, hats off to you. This was one of the finest presentations on why Shaklee I've ever seen. You did an excellent job.
Yes, it is. I'm so glad we can have it archived because I know loads and loads of us are going to be using this for sure. Yeah. So,
just not any questions, but compliments. Awesome. Go, Bob. Great job. Nicely done. Yes.
You always hit it right on the head. That you just always are on the mark.
Well, I loved your languaging. I loved the way you positioned everything, and the flow was so nice to just kind of take us along. Yeah, and as I was listening to you, I'm thinking, oh, so-and-so has to hear this. So-and-so has to hear this. I got to share this with so-and-so. So we always know it's a good presentation when people think of people that they need to be sharing a presentation with.
Yeah, we always recommend that while you're taking notes, leave room in the margin for the names of the people you want to contact so that you don't forget.
Someone asks if we'll be able to see it again. It will be archived at betterhealthin31days.com. And that's a subscription website. It's password protected for a number of reasons, but also the subscription helps compensate our webmaster for his work and expertise and knowledge in recording and archiving the presentations. But it'll be there, so it'll be available whenever you want to use it or show it to somebody. We always make this available.
And what we'll do is I've already posted this as a Dropbox link in a number of the groups I'm involved with, 100 Days to Amazing and a number of others. I will ask Chris to simply put a link to the slides on the free side of Bob's Files, bobsfiles.net. Just, sign up free. And again, we appreciate Chris greatly. He does a huge amount of work in archiving and cleaning things up and maintaining that beautiful Bob's Files and beautiful Better Health in 31 Days, and so he needs to be compensated. So we do put these webinars on the paid side, but it's well worth the money. But what I would suggest is that for all of you, if you want to download the slides and utilize them, I inaugurated this presentation a couple weeks ago at a big meeting for Iowa. About 90 people there in Des Moines. And since then, I've used it in many, many times. And every time I've used this presentation, I've gotten a very, very, very positive response. The latest time was this afternoon when I presented it to a young man, a brilliant young guy, who is our director of economic development here in Fairfield. And we spent about an hour and a half with each other, just kind of going back and forth. He has a master's in statistics, so he's no one's fool. And he kind of put me through some paces. But after finishing this, he just was sitting there stroking his chin. He said, very interesting, very, very interesting. So, if you want to use it yourself and just, you can doll the slides up, put your own pictures in. I think it's a good idea to have a presentation like this that we can do. Yes. On our own, and we can put our own personality in.
Mm-hmm. This would be a very good one, too, to do when you are giving a talk for an organization, for example. Perfect for that.
A couple questions. If you had to pick just one item with Shaklee to improve health, what would it be?
Wow. That's a of course, it depends. It's entirely in the context of who you are, how old you are, and all that. But, to me, and it depends on how much money you have, I'll just give you my own experience that if a person wants one product and they don't have very much money, I tell them to buy Vital E. Vital E you can buy for $13 or $14 a month. It's the premier multi-mineral multivitamin. And I have found that for people who have not supplemented at all, even when they start just with Vital E, the results can be striking. And then if you have a little bit more money, have Vital E and one of the protein products. But it's not one product, it's a strip of products. But our new life plan is, I'll tell you what, if you don't have the money to buy it, become a distributor, and as my mom did with her alfalfa 45 years ago, sell enough to buy her alfalfa. The life plan is striking to me. That's a 80 nutrient set with Vivix liquid gels, and then the shake, Life Shake, that has probiotic in the shake. I mean, just these are all, they roll off our tongue like it's nothing to do that. Every single product in the life plan is an engineering and scientific tour de force. It took 8 years to figure out how to take Vivek's active ingredients and put it in a liquid gel. We take it for granted because Shaklee makes all these wonderful products. But when you look at the universe of scientific expertise and engineering expertise and then scaling up expertise, it really is quite something. So, the most important product a person can be on, if they've got the means and the will to do it, or they've got the will to go get the means to do it, is the life plan. Because that covers all the bases, basically everything a person would need to optimize nutrition at every scale is in life plan.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Bob. There's one interesting comment here. The use of the word always by Shaklee concerns me since it only takes one mistake to not be always. Are we sure we can say always? Always safe, always green, always works?
Well, when you think of it, if you have an I, thou orientation rather than I, it, at what point would you design a product that was not safe? At what point would you compromise and create a product that didn't work? And at what point would you compromise and create a product that was not sustainable? People say Shaklee products, cost money. Well, yes, they cost money because in order to ensure that always works, always safe, always green, that takes a huge amount of testing. Shaklee tests for 380 different contaminants. And the tolerance for those contaminants is 0. Now, folks, you can't make that claim if you don't test every single batch of raw materials that come in. Most companies don't test at all. They just take the word of their suppliers that say, good, let's make it up. Some companies statistically batch test. They'll test one batch out of 10. Shaklee tests rigorously for those 380 contaminants, every single raw ingredient that comes into Shaklee. So, does always mean always? Well, it means to the extent that it is humanly possible. Mm-hmm. That is always the case. And since there's never been a major lawsuit over a Shaklee product, I'd say that we are safe. I mean, I take the questioner's point, and there are no absolutes in the relative world here. But to the extent that anything can be an absolute, that is an absolute because, as the questioner pointed out, it only takes one time when you can prove that Shaklee made a product that didn't meet those design criteria to really, create a real problem. And so Shaklee is simply not going to do that. So I would say, to the extent that it is humanly possible, given the design criteria that Shaklee used, yes, that is always the case.
Mm-hmm. Good explanation. Good. Can we share some screenshots of this presentation on our Facebook page?
Share away. Why we did it. And in fact, everyone who's on the call should go to, if they're on Facebook, go to 100 Days to Amazing. Just go up in your search window and type in 100 Days to Amazing and ask to be part of that group because I post routinely in that group. And I will tonight repost these slides, and so you can just get them out of Dropbox and download them and play with them as you wish.
Great. Thank you so much again, Bob. This was just outstanding. And I thank everyone for being with us this evening. Let's go out and share this information with the world and make it a better place for all of us.
That's great. Thank you all. It was a pleasure doing it.
Okay. Good night. Thank you, Joe.